Hearing none. Joe, do you want to start with the budget review?
Sure. So as far as everyone should have received this afternoon, kind of a 3-page document, kind of with the latest updates for the budget review. The first page is just kind of an overview of the anticipated revenues and anticipated expenditures, kind of that will kind of map to the assessment pages, and the second page, which is the kind of the bridge of where we were and where we're going. Currently, as far as this still has us using the same amount of balance forward from last year, the 339,866. We have a little bit of balance forwards for Aetna and Dixmont related to that bond payoff, which we're in year 2 of, that they're getting their bump. And then we have the proposal to use fund balance for the business office software. In the bottom is the current where we are by article, as far as there has been some shuffles based on the tweaks that we'll get to. So as far as probably the most important page here is page 2.
Joe, before we go anywhere, you've got a number in vocational ed.
Vocational, okay, yeah, that number basically what we had that number's not finalized yet. As far as I think there were some preliminary numbers, and then I think they are going to get revised again. And so as far as that's not a hard number yet, as far as I think the high end of this could be as much as 59,000, but as far as I think they're going back and relooking at their budget, and so kind of make this all balance. I was from the changes I made, I had a little extra, so I just stuck it on that line as a placeholder for right now. As far as before, it was just over 50,000. Now it's at 55. So that's just kind of hedging on what that's going to come in at. I think their initial proposal is to have that be around 59,000, but I think they are going back and looking to reduce that. So we'll see what that ends up being, but that's kind of a placeholder for right now.
Okay.
So if we go to that second page, as far as kind of the bridge, as far as we've kind of gone through it until you get down to this proposed reductions from the last meeting and then this meeting. And so as far as the first one on there, which I think we talked about last time a little bit, as far as the title position, as far as that we had, that's at Sebastopol, that we had originally budgeted in the local budget, but now we're anticipating that being able to be covered with title funding. So as far as we're moving that out of the district budget. So that's about $54,000. When last time when we met, as far as our maintenance reductions, I projected kind of around 40,000, and we've kind of changed that to, as far as based on reductions, as Alicia went through her budget in other places from the actual snow plowing numbers. She reviewed electricity and some lawn care, so it ended up coming down more than just in the repairs that we kind of projected. So that was down about 65,000. The pole vault pit, took that out. That's $19,000. That's going to be with the kind of the not doing the spring sports season. As far as we're kind of freeing up some money there, and we're going to use funds from this budget for that, so it won't be needed in the next year's budget. The next position here is like a high school English position. As far as this is a person who's retiring, and this is where Mary would like to have that position be this new science position instead of replacing this position. So that's kind of a swap of positions, as far as, so she wants to keep that new science position that we added, but it kind of eliminate this position that she previously had. So it's kind of a wash. There's about a $30,000 difference between the two positions, between what we had previously, what we had in the budget for the science teacher in this position. So it's pretty close to the same. And Liz kind of reviewing her budget. We were able to take she reduced her out of district funding by about $50,000. I believe she's thinking that she's going to be able to get other funds to help would cover those costs through her local entitlement funding or kind of from the care funding. And then we kind of went back through as far as and looked at the administrative wage increases that were proposed. We had originally had the 2.5%. Yes, we've reduced that in the budget to 2%, with the exception as far as we had the 4 specific requests that were in here. We maintained those at this point, with the exception of the principal wage. Was the recommendation was to go to 82 on that, and principal agreed that as far as they would go with 80. So as far as that was so kind of 2,000 less than what was originally anticipated. So with those reductions, that bucket of reductions is about 266,000. We take that along with just using, like I say, and before we had talked about using fund balance for the van and also for the Volkswagen bus settlement, that bus purchase, as far as kind of remove those. So those are just kind of in the budget, kind of being funded through the budget. So the only thing left out here as far as is the financial system software, as far as keeping that, using fund balance for that, since it's kind of a one-off purchase. And so with that, as far as this will get our basically the total local share of the budget with these reductions gets us to the 2%. So that's what kind of page 3 will show as far as bottom line, as far as we get to a 2% increase locally. By doing that, as far as it kind of has a large variance here, as far as everywhere from a town like Corinna actually has their amounts go down by 1.68%, but Dixmont is kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. They're actually still up 6.24%, and then you have Plymouth and St. Albans kind of on the high ends. Then you have like Heartland and Palmyra kind of on the lower end as well. So that's kind of the bridge as far as kind of the changes we made to kind of get to that 2% number. So as far as if anyone has any, we can discuss those. If anyone has any specific questions on it, and kind of talk about what we think of those adjustments.
Bill?
Yeah, Robin, go ahead.
Nobody ever likes to talk about wage increases because some people feel it's a personal attack, which it's not supposed to be. But when a principal or the business office or whoever asks for a raise, is it automatically put in the budget? We don't discuss it other than we just let it go, and then maybe at some point we take some out, but it automatically goes in.
Well, I think what we were thinking back in the time is we kind of, I think the ones from the main office, I mean, we had a pretty decent discussion on those, and I think we agreed with those. Laura's, the principal one, we didn't really discuss it too much. We kind of wanted to see where it would land within the budget at the time, and so we put it in at the full amount that she was asking for. I don't believe we really had a detailed discussion on that. I think we were asking Joe for some feedback on some of that stuff, and maybe if I went through my emails, I could find it again. And I'm happy to bring that back up.
Remember, this is the same conversation we had last year at the budget committee. And I brought every increase to the budget committee for the last 2 years because I didn't want to say people just got those increases. We brought Luann's, we brought Kathy's, we brought both this year to the budget committee because I didn't want them just to be rubber stamped. Laura discussed her increase last year when she was going to one of the biggest elementary schools, and then it was the wrong time because we were partway through the budget committee. She brought the same figures back to us this year, showing that any school in the area as big as hers, she's actually underpaid. So I had a conversation with her from going from the 82, which she requested this year, down to the 80, which is the exact same request that she made last year. She's done a great, I mean, again, we can't really talk about her specific, we can because she's been brought up, but again, that data has been brought to this committee 2 years now, up for discussion, and we have discussed it thoroughly.
I just don't remember discussing it this year, that's why I asked.
We did last year, and then in the beginning, right before the coronavirus hit as hard as it did, I think in one of those meetings we discussed, she was there, and I think it was in my office down south. It was a while ago.
No, I remember it.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, Joe, back on the first page, there is a almost $1 million difference between last year or this fiscal year and next fiscal year in the district administration. Where's that coming from? Can you remind me?
Yeah, that was the bond. The bond payoff was in that article last year. That was $1 million.
Thank you.
The opposite of that is up in the other, up above where it says bond payoff, and you've got the 1043 in 2019, 2020, 2021, correct, Joe?
Yeah, that would be the revenue side of it.
Okay. Any other comments on this?
I have another one if no one else has anything.
Go ahead.
One of the things that concerns me just looking at it, maybe if Liz, Liz is on, the $50,000 reduction in out-of-district placement. If I recall correctly, that's one of those things we really can't control. We sort of get to a place where we absolutely have to do it. There's no, I mean, if it's the student's best interest. So how are we going to, that seems like a place where we could easily go over budget if we're reducing it that much.
So Ryan, I am thinking that the CARES Act money, which allows a broad, variety of uses, could be a source. So in the event that we do need that, that it would be there through that avenue.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that is informed. It's not a guess, but a informed idea that we might well need that. The students who are currently out of district are covered, but given a lot of data that we've been collecting this year, it's highly likely we may need to make another placement. But I do think that the CARES Act should be a source for that if we need it.
Bill, I've got a question.
Go ahead, Leland.
Yeah, and sorry I didn't get in here when I did. I had a hard time getting in this meeting tonight. But anyways, so I didn't hear the portion on the maintenance reductions of that. Is that a reasonable reduction? Are we going to live with that? 65,000? That seems like a pretty high reduction in maintenance fees. Expectation of maintenance cost.
Yeah, I think there's two pieces to that. One was kind of a reevaluation of the repairs budget for next year, as far as Leisha going through and kind of prioritizing those. And the other piece of it is when she went back and reviewed, she kind of reevaluated her snowplow bids were finalized and agreed to as far as by the building committee. So as far as she had hard snowplow numbers, so she had some savings there. She reevaluated the electrical usage and kind of had some reductions there. And she reviewed her lawn care budget. So it was kind of scattered throughout her budget. It wasn't just kind of looking at the repairs and kind of, just kind of say, not gutting it, but heavily reducing that. She kind of went back and reevaluated a number of areas of her budget to come up with those.
Okay, so you're not aware of that anything to do with any repairs that have to be at the facility itself, the maintenance facility, right?
Well, she did go through as far as in her repairs budget. She, I think it was about 40,000 that was reduced from her lines, and then so as far as she did, kind of went through and kind of reprioritized and dropped some things off that list.
Okay.
What were the things that were dropped off the list?
I'm not sure off the top of my head as far as I look. She came out and I think she shared with the building committee kind of a before and after list, and I don't remember off the top of my head which items changed. But as far as I think the building committee asked her to kind of go back, prioritize kind of kind of a 1, 2, 3 scale, and she kind of went back, prioritized, and then reduced them. But I don't know the items off the top of my head. I'd have to compare her two sheets. Not sure. Bill, if you remember, or Mike, but
There was some tubing and something that brought air into the boiler room over at Sebastopol. It was something that'd be nice to be done, but it doesn't impact how things operate. May have been a few doors here and there that didn't need to be replaced, or a couple of other things that she put on her list that would be nice to be able to take care of, but nothing that we felt that if we took it out, we'd be going backwards in terms of the way we've been doing it. Things that would be nice to get done, leave it on the list for a couple of years, but aren't like, had she thought that they needed to get done this year, we would not have taken them off the list.
Mike, do you want to discuss the email that we get from Newport?
Sure. When I sent out my email and was starting to request people's what they were raising their budget, I did get in discussion with Jim Ricker, and I wanted to also ask about whether he put in the SRO. And what he's done is he's frozen that right now, and I don't know quite what that means, but I don't think that his budget committee wants to have any increases above for pay increases, and they've frozen the SRO position. So I think that's forced us to have to go back to our committee and see what that means to us, whether we continue to put our 60,000 in and see what we can do. I guess I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I don't want to say that he's going to be okay spending the 30,000 or whatever matching part he had on his end. That being said, I'm really kind of hoping we get to a place in our budget that we can not officially but unofficially let the towns know what these increases are, because they're all, and we are all, wondering what the decrease in revenues is going to do to all of us. That's a whole deep conversation, because I think that money is going to be the next money that we get from the federal government, but towns and communities are a lot more worried right now than they were when we started our budget process. So he has, indicated that they've frozen that. His committee has frozen that SRO position.
And even if we get money from the federal government, I mean, if the state of Maine gets money from the federal government, we don't know how Augusta is going to divvy that out, or how they're going to do the cuts or anything of that nature. So I guess we need to, how do we want to handle the SRO position as of tonight? Do we want to hold off? Robert,
I would like,
you have a committee meeting coming up?
we have, it was pretty full this week, so the soonest that we can meet is next Wednesday night. So we'd know more after that, but I would like to see us leave it there just as a temporary measure, knowing full well that we need to do something, but it won't be the SRO position that we envisioned.
So if it's not the SRO position that you envisioned, and I know that you got the committee, but I mean, are you thinking about putting an ed tech into that position, or?
To me, it sounds like either an ed tech position or a security firm or something. Because Mary and Angela have both said that they feel that it's an extremely important position. How it looks, we don't know right now, but they need something because with a grand scale of over 1,200 kids in one building and the age of those kids, they felt that it was an extremely important thing. So what I want to do is get my committee back together and see just what, we can brainstorm and see what we think we can do with some sort of a position. And we may come back and say, at this time, if we can't have an SRO, we don't want anything. But I don't know that tonight.
Okay. And then,
So I guess one question as far as to just get clarification on if, kind of our target was to get to the 2%, and kind of what we presented kind of does that. I guess the next question is the committee still satisfied with the 2%, or are they are we rethinking that?
from my standpoint, we'll go around and hear what everybody has to say. But I mean, I think since we had our meeting a couple of weeks ago, both the Bangor Daily News and the Portland Press Herald have come out with quite detailed articles about how Maine is going to be hit extremely hard from this. And I pulled it up so that I could have it here. Oxford Economics says that Maine is going to be the most vulnerable to economic fallout from the coronavirus due to all the population abundance of small businesses and reliance on retail and tourism. So I think it's what we were saying a few weeks ago, I think has been backed up with what we've seen in the newspaper articles. And I think, I think that we should try to get this as flat as we possibly can. My personal opinion. And I think that we've got enough proof behind it that we need to do that. The question becomes whether or not we gamble and try to get a 2% pass, and if we get it passed, great. And if we don't get it passed, we've got 2% to play with. So there's the gamble that you've got. So that's my opinion. I'll go around the committee. Robin, what are your thoughts?
I think we're going to have a hard time getting 2% to pass. So I think we need to look at the budget and look at what we absolutely have to have and what we can put off for another year. And we may be in that same boat again next year, but it's not going to be easy this year to get anything passed.
Ryan, what are your thoughts?
How much time you got?
We got a little bit of time. Go for it.
I am concerned still about the special education out of district placement. I recognize Liz's expertise. I'm just concerned about counting on that money to cover that cost. It's a pretty substantial number. I am concerned about the SRO position if 40% or whatever it was of the funding has disappeared. And other than that, I think where it's at right now is fine.
Mark, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I share Ryan's thoughts about that. I guess the last thing I would like to see happen is a repeat from the last financial downturn of not budgeting enough money to run the district and then having to take out a loan at the end of a few years. But I would also be in favor of any reasonable cuts that could be made without harming the ability of the district to function.
Karina?
I'm comfortable with the 2%, and it does give us a little bit of wiggle room, whereas, yeah, I don't know, I think that it's reasonable at this point. I mean, I know that towns probably want to see a zero budget, but a 2% increase, considering all of the raises and whatnot contractually, is good.
Leland?
As like I said last time, last meeting, I was concerned about with the economic downturn, how it's going to really affect not just this budget, but the upcoming budget after this. But I had a question though on the like the pay and stuff like that increases. And maybe I heard this before and I just didn't recognize it. But do we at all look at cost of living adjustments? How's that affected as it does all other pay raises for federal, state employees, et cetera? Whereas they try to balance it out with cost of living increases and not exceeding that, which is a good balance, and look forward on economics and revenues for states and local economies, right? That's just a question. But as I said before, I'd like to see as good as possible to neutral as possible, just so that way, if we do have to do any increases this up this coming year, that we're able to do that, but not such a drastic upturn. That's my thought.
Mike, do you want to comment on his question?
Well, I mean, the cost of living would probably be not much less than 2%. I don't think. I can't remember what we said, Karina, when we were talking to the
1.6.
1.6. Okay, so that's what I would say about that. I don't think 2% is a big budget right now. To answer Ryan's questions, I guess I have firm confidence that if you can't replace something that with the CARES Act, like I was talking about with the computers, but if we didn't budget for a out-of-district placement and then we had to use it, it's not replacing something that was in the budget. So I feel confident that if we had another out-of-district placement, we could use it there. We also have the $50,000 contingency in special ed. So I think I can answer those questions. I got to say that you could go 1.5 if we take out the SRO. I think it makes it a little easier. And that's the only addition that we have in this budget is that position right now. We've cut everything else back out that we've asked for. I think if we have to go down to 0%, it's going to be a couple $100,000, $250, and we're going to be taking out another couple people. And we're really working with what we need right now. So that's kind of how I feel about going any lower. If you want to go to 0, it's going to be a couple more people, because I don't think we can nickel and dime and find that much money.
Veronica, you were last on my list. What do you think?
I thank you, Mr. Hammer. You've already answered one of the questions I had, and it was again about that special ed placement. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to ask for the 2% because if we're lucky enough to get it, and certainly that's wonderful moving forward. But it does give us room to work in case the towns don't approve it.
Okay, so we're kind of split, but I mean, it's going to be 4-3.
Bill, if I could just add, I'm not against the 2%. I'm just saying that if it's possible at all. But if it looks like it's going to be really, like Mike's saying, having to take positions away, then I would be against dropping it further.
I would love to get 2%. I don't know if we can. That's the thing. And so do we gamble with, going with the vote and getting it through, going through all the steps through the end? If it gets rejected at some point in time, we've got to come back. And maybe the 2% is a good enough cushion for us to push out there to see what people think. And, I still think we still have a couple of areas. The SRO position is up in the air. We need to really somehow and I don't want to wait. Thing is, Robin, I don't want to wait 2 weeks. I'm trying to look at.
It wouldn't be 2 weeks, it's next week, the 6th.
Right, but the thing is then we wouldn't be ready to go until the 12th. I guess we've got time, because I guess we're not going to give it to the school board until the 16th.
You don't even know when the vote's gonna be. Or when the regional meeting is gonna be, for sure.
The regional vote, the public budget committee, the referendum, we've got tentatively scheduled for June 3rd.
Well, I understand that the governor is probably going to extend the stay-at-home for at least 3 more weeks. So I'm not sure that June, whatever the date is gonna work.
Could I say something, Bill?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, 2 things I'd like to say is, I think they're gonna schedule the voting for July 14th, because my wife is on the election committee here in Corona. But the other thing is, you got the principal, I can't remember the lady's name, that wanted to get a raise last year, and then we voted her down because it's in the middle of the school year. Now, the raise she's putting in for now is about 3 times the 2%, right?
That's been back down with this. She's back down to 2%.
No, what I'm saying is, she's asking for 5% more than the other ones are asking for.
So her request was for 82,000, and then that's been reduced to 80,000, and right now she, I believe, is at like 70. I think it was 75.7, 75.8 in that ballpark.
So what is the percentage?
Yeah, so it's well, she's at see if we can do this here. Let me work around here. So say roughly, as far as she's asking for, say it's roughly a $4,000 dollar raise. Yeah, it's like 5.3. That's at the reduced level.
I have a question for Joe, if that's all right, Bill.
Absolutely.
So, Joe, where do we stand on the school nutrition budget? Is he still going to need that full 80,000 based on the financial outlook from increased reimbursements?
He's definitely doing a lot better as far as we haven't, probably at the end of April, we'll be able to reevaluate his budget a little bit more. I think it definitely is much more favorable right now. So as far as, I think he's still going to need a chunk of that. But as far as, as far as our concern before was that he would go over it, I don't think that's a concern now. I think the question is how much of that 80 is he going to need? And so as far as after we've kind of evaluated, the month of April with all of his revenue and expenditures, we should have a better idea. But as far as, I think he'll definitely require some funding. I just don't know how much yet.
Can you estimate when? You said we have to get the April numbers in there. Will we be able to figure that out before we need to move forward the budget to the full school board?
We can definitely, I think basically as far as our budget is built on kind of more traditional funding, right now he's getting extra funding on the summer food program because it's a higher reimbursement rate, and he gets paid for everybody regardless of their income levels. So as far as right now, he's kind of getting a win. I think his budget is based on more of a traditional kind of balance between, as far as kind of a traditional school year, as far as at school with, full pays and free, the mix of blended, payments and such. As far as, so I don't think what is happening now is going to impact how we built his budget for next year. So I think we'd still say he needs the 80,000 next year. I think this is just kind of a temporary thing based on the reimbursement rates under the summer food program and the volume that he's doing. I think the volume exceeded what anyone anticipated.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So Mike, we took a look at, and Joe, the pole vault pit, we were able to push into this year's budget and take it out of next year's budget. And I believe Alicia may have done one or two of those things with her budget also. Is there anything else out there that we may be able to capture in this year's budget and spend it now? Is there anything else in that category that we could take a look at?
I'm not sure. We'd have to look back at that. I mean, obviously, the big thing is, once you get to our budget, as far as, when it's mostly people cost, which obviously will incur as we go through the year, and debt service, which is mostly state funded. So as far as that's about 80% of our budget, the other 20%, a lot of it is kind of cyclical as far as you go through each sports season and all the different things. But we can definitely look at that a little harder as far as part of that's kind of evaluating, this year's expenditures as far as how we're forecasting this year to come out and what funds are available. And I think probably areas like Alicia's is probably one of those areas that, if there is an area that we may be able to push a little bit, it may be there where we can push a project or two. But, we'd have to look at that case by case. It's just our budget is just so heavily, people cost. And so it kind of limits what we can do in that area.
Hey, Bill, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is there any other carryovers from sporting events that funds will not be spent on due to non-participation?
So that's that's where one area where kind of the pole vault money is coming from, because of the fact that spring sports is kind of not happening. As far as we're able to kind of push that project to this year. So as far as, that's kind of, athletics is kind of one of those areas where we've kind of looked to do that. And I think, and I think Josh is kind of looking at his budget higher as far as to kind of buy things this year that, that potentially we'll have to look at for next year. But, we'll see as far as, but the pole vault pit is a clear example of one of those items, like related to the fact that there's no spring sports this year, so we're able to spend the money for a next year item.
Thank you.
We must be saving something on electricity because all the lights shouldn't be on in the schools. Probably the heat's still on, but there should be more savings than just spring sports.
Yeah, there will be some occupancy costs. Unfortunately, the heating season seems to be going a little longer this year than anyone probably wishes. But know that Alicia was just talking about buying more wood chips. But as far as and the utilities, there are. I'm sure I haven't quantified that as far as savings. As far as there is a lot still, janitors in all these buildings. At the middle school, high school, there's a lot. The meals programs going on. So there is, activity, but obviously not the same degree as if it was fully occupied by students.
So we can look at our spending categories, maybe paper or insurance or something like that, and see if we can make a payment. But we'll take a look at that. we'll have April behind us.
The other thing, excuse me. Joe, have you heard anything from, I need to get something to drink, I'm sorry.
All right, while he's doing that, Joe, with the $70,000 for the financial software being the only thing we're using from fund balance, where does that leave the fund balance after that?
So yeah, I mean, obviously, as far as well, not obviously, but as far as we kind of had, talked as far as about there was like that kind of, we kind of talked about maybe a 500,000 that could be put into capital reserve, or just to keep for, just to have on hand in case funding from the state got reduced or an issue like that came up. So we have that. So basically, if we have the 339 that we said we're putting forward, the same amount as last year, plus the 70,000, there's about 541,000 more in fund balance that we kind of haven't tagged to anything.
More info, so $1 million total.
No, I'm including that 500,000 in there. As far as, so that 500 plus another 41,000 or so. But when I'm saying that, as far as, after everything we've committed to this year, and I'll just read these numbers off real quick because I'm kind of looking at the paper, but I know you folks aren't. But as far as after everything we committed to for the upcoming year, we had about $1.8 million in fund balance. If we kept about 3% of that, as far as just for fund balance, just for good practice, as far as that brings our fund balance down to about 951,000. And then we're going to put 340,000 towards next year, plus another 70,000, and that leaves about just over 540,000 more that we haven't identified. We kind of had talked about, kind of working on increasing our capital reserves and things like that, but it could be, that's an option. It could be used out for, we could put it towards tax relief.
So if we, let's say, hypothetically, we did go and put 500,000 in the capital reserve account, that would leave us 40,000, or the 3% plus that 41 or whatever it was.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a quick question. I was at our last meeting, we were supposed to hear back from the buildings committee as to what budgets they needed, and I know Somerset had a long list. The numbers that we're working with tonight, do those include all the exclusions from next year's project list, or is that still being worked on?
Yeah, so this is based on a revised project list for next year. So as far as Alicia has gone through and kind of revised the list of items for next year.
Thank you.
Yep. So as far as targets, as far as right now we're at the 2%. As far as if we want to get down to like a kind of a 1% increase, we need to chop out about another 118,000, and then to get to zero, we'd have to chop out about $235,000. That's kind of the numbers. I mean, so as far as technically, if you want to get down to 1%, if we didn't do the SRO and use the 40,000 kind of in the fund balance, that's 100,000, getting close to that 1% number. But as far as once you get beyond that, like Mike said, we're cutting deeper.
Okay, I don't want to go into fund balance any more than what we're doing now. So, I think what we do going forward is, we're at 2%. We've got two unknowns, Joe, that I can think of: the SRO position and then, the vocational school. What other unknowns do we have as of right now?
I think there's, like I said, as far as if the committee is fine with what we've proposed here this evening, as far as at this point, then I think those are the big question marks. I think the SRO was that's obviously 60,000. That's a pretty large sum of money. And then the tech piece of it, I don't think that's just going to be a small piece. I think most that's going to go is probably less than 5,000, either up or down. As far as it's not gonna be a make or break thing. I think we're pretty close on that.
I agree.
So the way that we have our schedule right now is we actually have a budget workshop scheduled for next Monday. And then we have another one. Joe, it looks like you've scheduled it for Tuesday, May 12th.
That one would be our regular monthly meeting that we would normally, that's kind of the regular scheduled budget committee meeting, monthly meeting, which will go over financials and things like that. The challenge is next week, as far as, I guess the question is next week's meeting will have any value based on the fact that the SRO committee won't meet until next Wednesday.
That's what I'm thinking. I don't think that we need to meet next week. I think we should wait and listen to how the SRO committee comes back with, what they come back with, and take a look at what we'll be able to have our financials, have a little bit of better idea of where we are sitting for the current year. And then, we still are not going to be given this budget to the school board until June 16th.
And that's based on that revised schedule. I think Mike is advocating, as far as if I understand correctly, I think all the towns are kind of itching for this information to know what we're thinking, and so I think the towns are going to kind of want to see something as early as possible. So I think that June date may be too late for a lot of those towns as they're doing town meetings and kind of going through their budgets. So as far as, obviously this thing isn't going to go to the public to be voted on to July 14th. We don't know right now as far as what the format or how we're going to execute a public budget meeting, because it's going to depend on what the rules are as we move forward. So that's still kind of in play. But I think the towns are kind of looking for some guidance as far as what we're proposing and as they're building their budgets. I know some have had town meetings, but some haven't.
So, Bill, I have a question about that.
Yep. Go ahead, Ryan.
Would it be appropriate, since the majority of the committee is okay with the 2%, and I think several of us are interested in knowing more about the SRO committee's work, would it be appropriate for the superintendent to share with the towns that it'll be 2% or less is what we're shooting for, without having run this by a full board?
Yeah,
if that's okay, then we can do that tomorrow.
I was thinking the same thing, because the budget's not going to go up; it's going to go down with everything. So, Mike, I don't have a problem with you sharing page 3 of this, of what Joe handed out today. And share that with the towns so they can compare off that. And if we come back to them, it's already, it's going to be a decrease anyways.
I think that would be helpful. I think so. If the governor goes out another 3 weeks, we've already, as superintendents, put a lot of pressure on our commissioner to say, how are we going to get our budgets done? Can we meet in separate rooms and still do some type of projection? Can we have 3 or 4 people come in and vote on the budget at a time? How is that going to work? Because that's important to all of us. And I would say we're also going to get as much pressure from the towns to say how we're going to have these budget votes and how we're going to set our taxes. So if we put this out to 2%, and this goes to the town, they can plan. It's like you said, it's not going to go up. They can at least start to plan, and we'll get some type of information back from them. And again, we're all trying to figure out how we're going to get through this budget process, because we've got to have a lot of meetings, towns included. So I appreciate the fact to be able to start to share this. And then, like I said, MSMA and everybody is pushing to figure out how we're gonna have this budget process. And I know everybody's worried about the revenue, and we are a tourist state and all that type of stuff, but I mean, we're not gonna be in this alone, and I would say towns are gonna want the money as much as anybody else so they're not cutting their services. I think keeping the reserve of what we have is a good move. We're lucky that we have above the 3%, in case we don't get our last payment or our last two payments, of next year, but, I feel we're in a pretty confident, position as opposed to what we've been in the past, so I think we roll with 2%, think about some other reductions we could potentially make, and, meet in a couple weeks. And I would like to get the budget to the board as soon as possible, like including maybe our May meeting if we're pretty confident that, we could do that.
When is the May? I don't have a.
So
When is the May school board meeting? The 19th?
Yeah,
It's gotta be the 19th.
So if we finalize this on the 12th, which is 2 weeks, 15 days from now, we could present it to the board on the 19th.
and you know, that gives you at least the chance for the full board to hear about what it is, and if they have some comments, we still have time, but the sooner we get it to the full board, the better.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I'm, like, when you say present it to the town as a 2% or less, are you gonna like tell Dixmont that, hey, your evaluation's higher, so it's not necessarily 2%? Like, I mean, or you're just gonna say overall budget's 2%?
I think we gotta show them the sheet, because you're right on, just because we say it's 2%, I mean, I kinda said that to them, I said, we're trying to get this down to 2%, and you start to get the pushback, and they're like, well, what's that mean to me? Well, Newport is $65,000, if you spread that out over taxpayers, is that something that they can absorb or not? And at Dixmont, they both, Dixmont has a high valuation, that's not how we calculate it, and work you as a board is trying to put that on them, under that. It is what it is in terms of valuation and how we calculate the mill rate. You know, and they got a little bit of a benefit for the money that we're setting aside, because, you know, when I talked about it, it might have been even a little higher if we didn't do that, set aside for them. But yeah, I think it needs to be that, you know, Corinna needs to know that that's minus 1.68, you know, I think they're going to be pretty happy.
I think so too.
Does that answer your question, Corinna?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Well, I guess that's where we go. Is anyone got any comments on the future couple of next 21 days? Hearing none, seeing none, I guess that's the way that we go. And anyone else got any comments before we adjourn?
Yeah, Bill, I have a couple hopefully quick items as far as just to cover. First one is just need to get approval for as far as for the current fiscal year, or our audit for the current fiscal year, as far as with everything going on, and as far as particularly with the building project still ongoing. As far as I'd like to stick with the same audit firm for the current fiscal year, which would require us to start doing some interim work here. They proposed basically a flat fee. Well, they're up $200 over the current year fees, which is basically flat. And it came in at this $24,500 is their fee that they're proposing for the current budget year. And so just kind of looking to see if there's any opposition to us kind of extending out with the current audit firm, RKO, who it seems to be very reputable as far as for a 1 year extension.
I am in favor of that. Robin, what do you think?
Well, the only question I have, it isn't that I'm opposed to them. I just wonder how often we would put it out to bid. just
Yeah.
to keep things honest.
No, as far as and their credit, as far as they've held their audit fees pretty flat with us, and I think we have a good working relationship. But as far as what I would like to do as far as is get through, because they've kind of audited all the building construction funding as we've gone through. And after we get through this, once this building project's done, the state will come in and audit all those books as well to kind of validate it. And so I kind of like to keep with them through until that construction work is audited, and then to put it out for bid as far as after that.
Only because I know that, sometimes when you put things out to bid, you get a better price.
Definitely. And I think I think we need to go that direction as far as, like I said, I just like to kind of stick with them until we've kind of buttoned down the build of this construction project. And like I said, I think they've done a good job.
I don't have a problem with that. The other thing is we need to do the same thing with all of our insurances. I know we did it a while ago, but I don't think we did it completely with every insurance that we have.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a target for next year as well, as far as now we kind of are getting our footprint kind of finalized as far as with all the buildings and sizes of all the buildings, and everything's getting, what's coming is what's here is going to stay and whatnot. I think plan is, I think the goal is next year to kind of put that all the insurances out for bid too.
Perfect.
Ryan, your thoughts?
I agree with Robin. I think it's fine, but I would like to see it go out to bid as soon as Joe is comfortable with that.
Mac?
I'm good with it.
Leland?
I agree with them too.
Karina?
I agree with Robin and Ryan.
Okay. Veronica?
Yes, I agree also.
All right, Joe, what's next?
All right. The other thing is just housekeeping, as far as we're getting a stack of warrants that we need to get volunteers that come in and sign. Every warrant obviously needs 2. I know Ryan's been very good with it in the past, and Don was doing it quite a bit too, but obviously he is no longer on this committee. So as far as, I'm not sure we can set it up as far as, kind of if 2 people wouldn't mind, as far as we set up a time, and I can put them in the conference room, and, one person can come in, by themselves into the conference room. They can come in that side door, so they don't have to really interact with anybody. They can be kind of solo, and they can come in, sign the warrants, and leave, as far as then ask any questions later if they want to. But as far as we are getting a little backed up on that piece of it, so I'm not sure if we can come up with a way as far as so that we can get those signed off on.
Yeah,
I have
still
two.
do it. Sorry. Go ahead, Robin.
No, I was just going to say I have Tuesday and Thursday off this week and can come in as well.
And that would be great as far as if you want. I mean, I can leave them in the conference room, or you can, however you want to do it. I can just tell me when you're going to be here, and I'll have them there for you.
I will send you an email whatever morning at what time I'll be there.
Okay. So Ryan, are you?
Yeah, I can do it as well. I was wondering what the process was going to be. I was kind of assuming that they would relax the rules around that. But if you have a system, I think what you outlined makes sense. Just let me know what day. I mean, I live 5 minutes from the central office, so just let me know what day Robin is going to do it, and I will do it on a different.
Okay, perfect. That's great. I appreciate it, Robin and Ryan. That way, we can get those up to date, so that those can all get filed away. But those are the 2 kind of extra items I had, though.
Okay. Okay, last call. Anyone else? Got anything? Okay, I guess we adjourn for the night, and I'll see